Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about the history of the atom. Because as we know, atoms are the tiny building blocks, the fundamental building blocks of everything. But because they're so small, we haven't always known their exact structure. So what we're going to talk about is the kind of 4 different models of the atom and how they changed, our understanding of them changed over time. So a long time ago, a guy called John Dalton came up with the first kind of proposed idea of an atom. And all his idea was that they were just made of simple, small spheres. So they were essentially just these little spheres that made up everything. So that was the first one, Dalton's model. Now, a little later, in 1897, J.J. Thomson came along, and his work showed something a little different. Now, what his work was called, he called it the plum pudding model. And the reason for this was his idea of the atom looked a little bit like a plum pudding. What you had is all of these negative electrons within a plum pudding of positive charge. So it's the idea that his idea was most of the atom was positive, but we had these negative electrons dotted throughout it like a plum pudding. Now, this was how the model was accepted for a while, until someone called Rutherford came along and did a particularly famous study. Now, what he did is, as we now know, and what he found out, is that the nucleus of an atom is positive. But the rest of it is actually made of empty space, or the majority of it is made of empty space. Because what he did is he fired these things called alpha particles that have a positive charge. Now, what he found is most of the alpha particles went straight through the atom. This gave for him his first finding that most of an atom is actually made of empty space. However, some of these alpha particles, when they got near to the nucleus, because they're both positive, they actually repelled. So, this showed him, but by being able to detect these alpha particles which repelled, it gave him the second finding, and that finding was that there is a positive nucleus. So we could see so far how this idea had evolved. Now, the final one we need to know about is the work of someone called Bohr. Now, due to him providing lots and lots of experiments and observations, we now have this understanding which we know for GCSE. And this understanding is that we have this positive nucleus, and then we have shells, electron shells around the outside. And like I said, the way that Bohr managed to come up with this model, the idea that we have this positive nucleus with electron shells around the outside, was because he carried out lots of experiments and observations. So in science, in order for work to be accepted, it needs to be peer reviewed. So at each stage, this work would have been reviewed by other scientists to make sure that their results match. So just to summarise, the history of the atom just shows how our understanding of the atom changed over time. Initially, Dalton thought that atoms were just small spheres. J.J. Thomson said it was more like a plum pudding model with a big kind of positive charge with electrons dotted throughout like plums in a pudding. Rutherford fired alpha particles to find that most of the atom was empty space, and that because some particles were repelled, it has a positive nucleus. And finally, Bohr came along, did some experiments and observations to find out that an atom has a positive nucleus and electron shells where the electrons are found. Thank you.